She walked in quietly, no flashy gear, no loud entrance, just a white belt and silver hair tied in a neat bun. The room laughed, the coach mocked her. But in less than 10 seconds, the laughter stopped and the dojo would never be the same. Again, what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished windows of Windermere Martial Arts Academy. Inside, sharp sounds echoed, bare feet pivoting on mats, instructors barking commands, and students shouting through punches and blocks. It was a modern space, sleek and high energy. Everyone moved with purpose and power. That's when Nora Vale walked in. She moved slowly, but with no uncertainty. Her white martial arts uniform was neatly pressed, tied with a plain belt. Her silver-gray hair was pulled into a tidy bun. Her face showed lines of age, but her eyes were sharp, like someone who had spent a lifetime paying attention. At the front desk, a young receptionist with perfect posture looked up, blinking as if unsure what she was seeing. "Hi there," the girl said politely but with confusion. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to join your martial arts program," Nora said, her voice soft but steady. The receptionist paused. She glanced over Nora's uniform, then back at her face. Our adult classes are very intense," she said. "We do have some gentle yoga for seniors on Thursday mornings." Nora smiled, not unkindly. "I'm not here for yoga. I'm here for martial arts. I've trained for most of my life." There was an awkward silence. Then, almost hesitantly, the receptionist handed her a clipboard. "We have an open session starting in 15 minutes, she said. "You can observe, and maybe speak with our coach afterward." "That will do just fine," Nora replied, taking the forms. As she signed her name, 2 teenage boys in athletic gear passed behind her, nudging each other and laughing under their breath. Nora heard them but didn't react. She simply took her bag, nodded her thanks, and walked toward the changing area. In the locker room, the walls hummed with energy from the main floor. Nora opened her worn canvas bag and carefully folded her coat, placing it inside. Her movements were slow, yes, but precise. She tied her belt not with effort, but with familiarity. Like tying a ribbon on an old gift, she stared into the mirror. For a long moment, her reflection looked back, calm and focused. "You've still got it," she whispered. Then she walked out toward the mats. The training hall was buzzing with activity. Around 20 students warmed up, men and women in their 20s and 30s, all looking lean, strong, and confident. They wore flashy gear and bright belts. Most barely noticed the older woman as she took a spot at the edge of the room. But one man did. Coach Damon Roy stood tall in the center, his blue training uniform covered in tournament patches. His black belt was tied perfectly, and he had the build of someone who had never taken a week off in his life. He moved like he owned the space. When he spotted Nora, he stopped. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Then came the smirk. He crossed the mat and stopped a few feet from her. "Can I help you, madam?" he asked, his voice clear and slightly amused. "I'm here to train," she said. Damon blinked. "You want to join this class?" "I do. This is an advanced session," he said, glancing back at his students, some of whom were already whispering and grinning. "It's not really designed for beginners, or," he hesitated, "people looking for a hobby." "I've practiced martial arts for over 40 years, she replied calmly. "I'd like to continue." A few students snorted with laughter. One muttered, "She probably thinks Tai Chi is karate." Coach Damon tried to keep his smile polite, but his tone turned sharper. "I admire your spirit, but martial arts at this level involves high impact. People get injured. We can't have anyone fragile on the mats." Nora remained still. "I'm not here to waste your time. If you're unsure, evaluate me. That's fair, isn't it?" Damon raised an eyebrow. You want a demonstration? I want a chance. He looked at his class, clearly enjoying the moment. All right then, he said loudly. Let's do a light interaction. Nothing serious, just a quick assessment. He turned to one of the younger students. Caleb, step up. A tall man with a blue belt stepped forward, flexing slightly as he grinned at Nora. Nora stepped onto the mat. She bowed respectfully. Begin. When ready, Damon said. And just like that, the energy in the room shifted. Students turned. Phones were quietly pulled out to record. Some laughed. Others just watched. This was going to be entertaining, or so they thought. Nora raised her hands into a defensive posture, knees bending slightly. Caleb lunged forward with a wide stance, aiming to grab her arm gently just to play along. But Nora Vale had not spent decades learning for nothing. In a split second, she pivoted. Her hands moved like wind. A flick, a twist, a shift of balance, and Caleb was no longer standing. The crowd gasped. He hit the mat with a soft thud. Blinking in shock. Coach Damon's mouth opened slightly. Nora adjusted her uniform. I believe you said this was an evaluation. The room fell completely silent. The room was frozen. For just a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. All that could be heard was the soft echo of Caleb's surprised breathing on the mat and the hum of the fluorescent lights above. Coach Damon Roy blinked, trying to process what he'd just seen. His student, tall, strong, 28 years old, had been gently but firmly brought to the ground by a woman more than twice his age. No wild motion, no aggression. Just a precise shift, a well-placed grip, and down he went. It was smooth, quiet, almost graceful. Then someone clapped. Just once. It came from the back of the room. The sound felt out of place, like a dropped pin in a concert hall. A few heads turned, but no one joined in. The tension hadn't lifted yet. Caleb sat up on the mat, rubbing the back of his neck. What just happened? He muttered. Nora Vale gave a polite bow and stepped back. She didn't smile. She didn't look proud or smug. She simply stood tall and waited. Coach Damon cleared his throat. His easy confidence had slipped a little, like a loose knot in a rope. Well, that was unexpected. A few students chuckled, trying to ease the tension. Some still smirked, assuming it was a fluke. Others were quiet, their eyes sharp now, paying more attention than before. Let's try a different approach, Damon said, recovering his voice. Ms. Vale, perhaps you and I could run through some basic drills, just to see what we're working with. Nora didn't hesitate. Of course, coach. Damon removed his black belt jacket, laying it gently on the bench beside the mat. He rolled up his sleeves, then motioned for the rest of the students to form a circle around the center of the room. All right, he said, loud and smooth again. We'll take it slow, just a positioning exercise. He stepped toward her, hands open in a relaxed stance. Nora mirrored him, feet shoulder-width apart, body balanced. Ready? He asked. She gave a small nod. Begin. He moved carefully, not wanting to overwhelm her. He reached out, intending to guide her wrist into a classic grip, just to test her footing. But Nora wasn't waiting. The moment his hand brushed her sleeve, she shifted her weight, turned her shoulder slightly, and locked her grip on his wrist before he could blink. In one fluid motion, she used his momentum, stepped forward, and brought him off balance. Damon stumbled, not falling, but suddenly unsure of his footing. The room fell silent again. Nora wasn't done. Her next move came without pause. She dropped low, hooked his leg, and with precise timing, brought him down to the mat carefully, respectfully, but firmly. Damon hit the mat harder than expected. He lay still for a second, staring up at the ceiling. His jaw clenched. She stood and offered him her hand. He took it. This time the students didn't laugh. They didn't even move. They just watched, stunned, as their head coach rose from the floor, dusted himself off, And bowed. Nora bowed in return. That, Damon said, his voice quieter now, was very well done. Thank you, coach, she said simply. One of the younger students, Malik, a red belt known for his speed and sarcasm, whispered to his partner, I thought this was supposed to be a warm-up. She warmed him up, all right, his partner replied under his breath. Coach Damon turned toward the class, his expression a mix of confusion, curiosity, and something else. Respect. Double quotes, Miss Vale, he said slowly. Where did you train? I studied under Master Goro Ian in Eastbridge, she replied. That name didn't ring a bell for most. But one older student, Juno, a quiet man in his 40s, turned sharply at the sound. Wait. Master Ian? The one who taught private students in the 90s? The pressure and posture guy? Nora smiled faintly. He always believed that technique mattered more than muscle. Juno whistled softly. No wonder. Damon folded his arms. So. You've been training for a long time? Since 1982, she said. The room was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't because they were doubting her. It was because they were starting to realize what they were seeing. She hadn't come to impress anyone. She hadn't come to win. She had come to practice. That evening, as the last few students trickled out, the chatter was different than usual. They weren't bragging about who had the fastest takedown or the hardest kick. They were talking about Nora Vale, how she moved, how she stayed calm, how she handled the room without raising her voice. Coach Damon remained by the mats, watching Nora as she packed up her bag. He walked over, no longer with swagger, but with thoughtfulness. Miss Vale, he said, I owe you an apology. I treated you like you didn't belong. She met his gaze. You weren't the first. I was wrong, he said. And I think our academy could learn a lot from you. Would you consider teaching a session? Nora shook her head. I didn't come to teach. I just came to train. He nodded, understanding. Double quotes, well, if you change your mind, the door is open. Nora smiled. So long as it's open to everyone. The following Thursday, the training hall at Windermere Martial Arts Academy didn't look quite the same. There was no music playing from the speakers, no fast-paced warm-ups, no bursts of energy or loud instruction. Instead, the room was quiet, focused. At the center, Nora Vale stood in her simple white uniform, guiding a group of mixed-age students through slow, careful movements. Her voice was gentle but steady. Every word was clear. Your weight goes here, she said, placing her palm near her hip. Then you wait. Patience first, movement second. The students followed her example, watching her more closely than they had ever watched anyone. Nora hadn't planned to teach a class. After all, she had only come to keep up her training. But after her evaluation earlier that week, something had changed. People had started to look at her differently, not with pity or doubt, but with curiosity, with interest at the first. To ask for help had been Lana, a university student who wanted to improve her ground control. Then came Kevin, a middle-aged accountant trying to avoid shoulder injuries. By Wednesday, 5 students had gathered around Nora after open mat, asking questions she couldn't ignore. So when Coach Damon suggested she lead a short fundamentals session, she agreed on one condition. No rankings, she said. No belts, just training. Anyone who wants to learn can join. And now here they were, 11 students, aged 16 to 63, all circling around an elderly woman whose movements still carried the wisdom of years. Coach Damon stood near the wall, arms crossed, quietly watching. He wasn't used to staying silent during classes, but this felt different. Nora wasn't just teaching positions, she was showing how to think like a martial artist. How to feel the space between movements. How to notice the small things most students missed. She didn't bark orders. She asked questions. What's your center of gravity here? Why do you think this sweep failed? What's the rush? And somehow it worked. Even the younger, more competitive students started to relax, to move slower, to listen. After the class, Nora bowed to the group, and they bowed back, not because they were told to, but because it felt right. Over the next few weeks, the academy began to change. What had once been a place for hard drills and tournament talk slowly opened its doors to new kinds of students. A retired firefighter named Luis joined after seeing a clip of Nora's demonstration online. He hadn't trained in years, but said something about her reminded him of the old days. Then came Mira, a single mother in her 40s looking for stress relief. And finally, a small group of seniors from the local community center showed up, asking some shyly, some boldly, if the silver belt lady was taking more students. Coach Damon was overwhelmed. But Nora wasn single quotes D. She welcomed each new student with the same soft focus, the same quiet respect. The class grew. They called it Foundations, though some jokingly referred to it as Nora's Corner. It met twice a week, in the mornings, when the studio was quiet. And each session was different. Some days they drilled the basics. Other days, Nora spoke about balance, not just physical, but mental. She taught breathing techniques, how to stay calm during a fight, how to react to pressure without panic. For the younger students, it was eye-opening. For the older ones, it was life-changing. Coach Damon eventually joined one of her classes, at first to observe, then to participate. To his surprise, Nora welcomed him as just another student. Leave the title at the door, she said with a wink. He did. One morning, after a particularly thoughtful session, a young woman named Sophia lingered behind. My grandfather used to talk like you, she said quietly. He said Jiu-Jitsu was more about thinking than fighting. Nora smiled. He was right. Would you ever consider teaching a youth group? Sophia asked. Some of the kids in my neighborhood could use someone like you. Nora thought. For a moment. She had come to the academy to keep herself moving, to avoid feeling alone in a new town. She hadn't expected to become a teacher again, but something had changed. She didn't just feel welcomed, she felt useful. I'll consider it, she said. Let's see where the next step leads. By the end of the month, the academy had become something more than a place to train. It had become a community. The rigid lines between young and old, beginner and expert, started to blur. Students from different backgrounds began pairing up. People stopped judging each other based on how fast they moved or how high they kicked. They started asking better questions, and at the center of it all was a woman in her 70s, moving quietly, guiding gently, and reminding everyone that strength didn't always need to be loud. The circle had widened. And no one wanted it to close again. 3 months after, Nora Vale first stepped onto the mat at Windermere Martial Arts Academy. The atmosphere inside the dojo had changed completely. The sharp sounds of sparring still filled the space. The mats were still busy, and students still pushed their limits. But now the energy felt warmer, more welcoming. Alongside the speed drills and grappling rounds were slow, thoughtful movements led by Nora and her ever-growing group of students. They called themselves the Roots class, a name suggested by a teenager named Leo, who had joined after his grandmother watched one of Nora's classes and told him, "You could learn something from that woman." "The roots keep the tree standing," Leo had said. "That's what she does for us." And so the name stuck. That Saturday, the academy was buzzing with excitement. It was the day of their first internal competition, a friendly event open to all students, no matter their age or experience. Family and friends filled the sidelines, sitting on benches or leaning against the walls with snacks, cameras, and nervous smiles. Coach Damon Roy stood at the front, holding a clipboard, but his usual commanding tone was gentler today. "Our judges this afternoon," he announced, "will be myself and someone who needs no introduction, Nora Vale." The crowd clapped. A few of the older students cheered. Nora stepped forward, bowing slightly, then smiled at the group. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to share one quick reminder." The room quieted. This is not about proving who's the strongest, she said. It's about testing what you've learned, respecting your opponent, and learning from every match, win or lose. That's what martial arts has always been about. She gave a small nod. Let's begin. Throughout the event, Nora and Damon took turns offering feedback, explaining techniques, and celebrating the small victories: good footwork, clean escapes, respectful handshakes. Even the students who lost their matches left the mat smiling. They weren't just being judged. They were being seen. During breaks, Nora offered quick demonstrations, simple movements, carefully explained. Not flashy, but powerful in their quiet precision. She showed how timing could beat strength, how leverage worked no matter your size, and how patience often won the day. Young and old watched closely. At one point, Coach Damon sat on the mat beside her, offering his arm for another technique. The crowd laughed when she gently flipped him onto his side again, gracefully, but clearly. I keep falling for that one, he said, rubbing his elbow. You're improving, Nora replied with a wink. By mid-afternoon, the last match had ended, and the dojo buzzed with easy conversation and shared stories. Parents thanked instructors. Students compared notes. The space felt more like a family gathering than a tournament. Nora slipped away from the crowd and found a quiet bench near the window. She took a deep breath, feeling the warm ache in her knees and the calm in her chest. This had been more than a day of matches. It was proof that something lasting had taken root. As she sat, she noticed an elderly man standing outside the glass doors. He leaned slightly on a cane and held a gym bag close to his side. His face looked unsure, part nervous, part curious. Nora smiled. She stood, walked to the door, and opened it for him. Hello there, she said kindly. Looking for someone? He glanced down shyly. I saw the flyers. I used to train a long time ago, but I'm not sure I belong here anymore. Nora held the door open wider. You're right on time, she said. Coach Damon spotted them and quickly crossed the floor. He greeted the man with a respectful bow, then turned to Nora and gave a small nod. No words needed. That evening, as the lights dimmed and the mats were cleaned, Nora helped fold up chairs and gather lost water bottles. A group of students lingered nearby, still chatting, still asking questions. Sophia, the young woman who had once asked Nora to consider teaching younger students, approached with a wide smile. Ms. Nora, she said, we've started calling the group the branches, the kids group, because, they grow from what you're teaching. Nora's smile widened. I like that. Would you lead the next session? Sophia asked. They really listen to you. Nora looked out over the space, once cold and competitive, now full of laughter and learning. I think I would like that, she said. As the sun set outside the academy and the last few students slipped out into the evening, Nora stood at the center of the training hall. The room was quiet again. In her mind, she thought of all the years she had trained in silence. No applause, no recognition. Just practice. And now, in this unexpected chapter of her life, that quiet strength had created something new, something bigger than herself. The roots were deep. The branches had started to grow, and the circle, once closed, had opened wide enough for everyone.